Welcome back to another Quick Truth. My name is Derek Truesdale. This week we're going to be talking about Ephesians chapter 6, verses 5 through 9. And those verses, the main idea found in them is the employee and employer relationship. But those verses say, "Bondservants, obey your earthly masters with fear and trembling with a sincere heart, as you would Christ, not by way of eye service as people pleasers, but as bondservants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, rendering service with a good will as to the Lord and not to man. Knowing that whatever good anyone does, this he will receive back from the Lord, whether he is a bondservant or is free. Masters, do the same to them, and stop your threatening, knowing that he who is both their master and yours is in heaven, and that there is no partiality with him." So we can see from this language that there's the relationship between a bondservant and a master is talked about in these verses. And in the context of Rome, there is this relationship of a master and these servants or household like slaves. And it was that way in the Roman Empire. It was just, there's no really modern concept of employment in that time. So if you had employees under you, basically they were your slaves and you were the master. And it's not really how we think of it today as in context of slavery when we think of it. It could be that kind of, but it was generally not that way. And that's basically the equivalent of today's employer-employee. Back then it was this, today it's this. So the same concept, if we want to take that from then and apply it to now, is basically an employer working for an employee. So how, when all of us are at work, how are we working for the people that are over us, our employers, the ones that are seeing over us and have authority over us? And if we are an employer, how are we looking down to the people that are serving under us? So these verses are really talking about that. And basically every situation is a little different. So you could have an employer that is great and he treats his employees well, and you can have an employee that works really hard, and that's a good situation. Or you could have an employer that's terrible, and we've all, I guess, had a bad boss in our lifetimes probably. You can kind of relate that sometimes they're just terrible, and sometimes the employees just don't want to work or anything like that. And so in that context, it's bad. Like, it can be bad. So it's really by situation if this is good or bad, employer, employees. But what these verses are saying here is basically work for your boss as an employee like he is God, like he is the Lord. So you're not really working for him, but you're working for God because God is the one that placed this person over you. So your boss is an authority that's placed in your life by God, and you serve him or her like how you would serve God if God was in that place. Even if our boss isn't around, if we're just employees and we're just at the job doing whatever, we should be working hard like they're there. Just because we're not there, just because they're not there staring and keeping an eye on us, doesn't mean we shouldn't be still working our very hardest, because there is someone who is watching, even if the boss isn't, and it's God. God's always watching us. I heard this story from another preacher, and he says it this way. He says there's a thief. He's breaking into a house, and he wants to steal everything, so it's dark in there, it's at night, and he's got a flashlight. He's flashing all around to see what's going on, and as he's looking around, he hears this voice saying, "Jesus is watching. Jesus is watching." So he's looking all around like, where's this voice coming from? Jesus is watching. What are you talking about? So he keeps hearing Jesus is watching, and then he finally flashes up to the corner, and there's a parrot up there. So the parrot is saying, "Jesus is watching." He says, so the thief says, "Who are you?" And he says, "My name is Moses." And so the thief said, "What kind of fool would name a parrot Moses?" And the parrot said, "The same fool that would name a Rottweiler Jesus." And so the parrot's saying, "Jesus is watching." The dog came and bit him and bit the mess out of him. So Jesus is watching, right? So in that case, it was a dog, but Jesus is always keeping an eye on us. And so it's not the boss really that an employee is working for. It's Jesus. So we should need to work for our boss like we would if God was here, if Jesus was here. In Colossians 3:23 through 24 basically says the same thing. Work hard, not for man, but for God. And it really should not be from like drudgery. It shouldn't be that we're just trying to get things done. It should be from goodwill. Like we want these things to go well for our company, our boss, whoever. And so it should be from goodwill. And then everything that we give, everything that we work hard to do is going to be given back to us by God. So that's a word to the employees. Then that last part here is about to the employers, saying don't lord over your people. Don't threaten them and treat them terribly, because you're not the highest point. Like as an employer is never the highest authority. There's always God. And so God is the authority over the employer and the employee. And that we both have to give an answer to God. And so we should both be acting like that. If you're an employer, if you're an employee, we should treat each other like we're treating God. So now we've seen that there's been a word here for employers and employees. And for an employee, we should be working hard and not for our boss necessarily, but for God. Work as if we're working for God. And then to the employer, don't treat your people terribly. Treat them well. Serve them like Jesus would serve them. So this has been another Quick Truth. Thanks for watching. God bless, and I'll see you next time.